Jack Miller stared at the computer screen, his tired eyes struggling to stay open. The large dish of the Arecibo Observatory had been pointing at a usually quiet sector of space for the past 6 hours, and he was ready to call it a night. Just as he reached for his coffee mug, a series of beeps came from his monitor. Jack sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. "That's weird," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The signal pattern on his screen didn't match anything he'd seen before. It wasn't random noise or the regular pulses of a pulsar. This was structured, almost like code. Jack checked the coordinates again. The signal was coming from a point between Mars and Jupiter, but there were no known objects there large enough to produce such a strong signal. He quickly ran it through the standard filters, ruling out satellite interference or bounce back from Earth transmissions. "Hey Susan, can you come take a look at this?" he called out. Susan Rogers appeared in the doorway, her long brown hair tied back in a ponytail. She had been working in the adjacent room, analyzing data from earlier observations. "What did you find?" she asked, walking over to his workstation. "I'm not sure." "Take a look at this pattern." Jack moved aside so she could see the screen. Susan leaned forward, her expression changing from casual interest to focused concentration. "That's not natural," she said after studying the readout for a minute. "The sequence repeats with variations that seem deliberate." "My thoughts exactly," Jack replied. "And look at the frequency shifts. They follow a mathematical progression." Susan sat down next to him and began typing commands into the terminal. "Let's run it through the advanced pattern recognition software." They worked side by side for the next hour, analyzing the mysterious signal from every angle. The more they examined it, the more convinced they became that they were looking at something extraordinary. "Jack, this has all the characteristics of an artificial signal," Susan said quietly, as if afraid someone might overhear. "And it's not one of ours." Jack nodded slowly. "I think we may have just picked up an alien communication." "We should call Dr. Benson," Susan suggested, referring to their supervisor. "Let's gather more data first," Jack said. "We need to be absolutely sure before we wake him up at 2 a.m. for what might be nothing." They continued monitoring the signal for another 2 hours. It maintained its strange pattern, sometimes growing stronger, sometimes fading, but never disappearing completely. They recorded everything, running multiple verification tests to ensure their equipment wasn't malfunctioning. By 4 a.m., they had compiled enough data to be confident this was something unprecedented. Jack finally called Dr. Benson, who promised to come in immediately. While waiting, Jack backed up all their findings to the main server. As he finished, Susan returned from getting more coffee and frowned at her screen. "That's odd," she said. "The signal's completely gone now." Jack checked his own monitor. The mysterious transmission had indeed vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. "Maybe they finished their conversation," he joked nervously. When Dr. Benson arrived 30 minutes later, they explained their discovery and tried to show him the recorded data. But when they accessed the server, the files were gone. Not just moved or renamed, completely erased. "I don't understand," Jack said, frantically searching through folders. "I saved everything right here." Dr. Benson looked skeptical. "Could you have imagined it? You both have been working long hours." "We didn't imagine 6 hours of consistent data," Susan insisted. "Something deleted our files." Dr. Benson sighed. "Without evidence, there's nothing I can do. Get some rest, and we'll talk later." After he left, Jack and Susan looked at each other with the same thought. Someone or something didn't want their discovery to be known. "I made another copy," Jack whispered, pulling a small drive from his pocket. "I wasn't going to mention it until we talked to Benson, but now I'm glad I did." Susan glanced nervously at the door. "We should keep this between us for now. Something very strange is happening." As they left the observatory that morning, neither noticed the black car parked across the street, nor the figure inside watching them through dark sunglasses. Jack unlocked the door to his apartment and froze. Something was wrong. The air felt different, disturbed. He flipped on the lights and looked around carefully. Nothing seemed missing, but small things were out of place. Books on his shelf had been rearranged. The drawer of his desk was closed all the way, though he always left it slightly open. Someone had searched his home. He checked his hiding spots. The small drive with the signal data was still safely hidden inside a hollowed-out book on his shelf. Jack grabbed his phone and called Susan. "Hey, it's me. I think someone went through my apartment," he said quietly. "Mine too," Susan replied, her voice tense. "I came home for lunch and noticed things moved around." "What's going on?" "Jack, I don't know, but keep that data safe. I'll come over tomorrow, and we can figure this out." After hanging up, Jack double-checked his locks and tried to sleep. He tossed and turned for hours before finally drifting off around midnight. A bright light woke him. Jack sat up in bed, confused. The clock read 3:17 a.m. The light was coming through his window, moving like a spotlight across his bedroom wall. It wasn't the moon or a car's headlights. This light was too steady, too bright. Jack got up and carefully moved to the window. In the wooded area behind his apartment building, a round object about the size of a small car hovered just above the ground. The object glowed with a soft blue light. As Jack watched, a section of the object opened, and two figures stepped out. Instead of running away, Jack grabbed his phone and started recording. He slipped on shoes and a jacket, then quietly left his apartment through the back door. The rational part of his brain told him to stay inside, but his curiosity was stronger. Jack moved quietly through the trees, getting as close as he dared to the strange craft. The two figures were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the moonlight. They looked mostly human, except their eyes were larger and their fingers longer. They wore simple gray outfits that seemed to change color slightly as they moved. The signal was definitely intercepted at this location. One of them said in perfect English, surprising Jack. "The human called Jack Miller lives in that building. We must retrieve the data before he understands what he has found," the other replied. Their voices sounded almost musical. Jack's foot snapped a twig. Both figures turned toward him instantly. "It appears we have a visitor," the taller one said. "Jack Miller, I presume." Jack considered running but decided it wouldn't help. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am Zoran," the taller one said. "This is Ilara. We represent the Galactic Council Oversight Committee." "Galactic Council," Jack repeated. Ilara stepped forward. "We know you intercepted a communication signal last night. That information is not for humans. We need you to give us the data you saved." Jack's mind raced. They knew about the backup drive. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied. "Please don't make this difficult," Zoran said. "We are authorized to retrieve the data by any means necessary." As they stepped toward him, Jack turned and ran. He zigzagged between trees, his heart pounding. A strange buzzing sound filled the air behind him. Jack risked a glance back and saw both beings gliding above the ground. Following him, he sprinted across the parking lot to his car. Just as he reached it, his phone rang. It was Susan. "Jack, they're here. Some people, not people. They're asking about the signal data." "I know. They're after me too," Jack panted, starting his car. "Meet me at the diner on Highway 16 in an hour. Don't bring anything except the data. And Susan, be careful. These aren't government agents. They're not even human." As Jack pulled away, he slipped the data drive from his pocket into his shoe. Whatever they had discovered, it was big enough that actual aliens had come to Earth to cover it up. And Jack wasn't about to let that happen. The diner was nearly empty at 4:30 in the morning. Jack sat in a corner booth, nervously watching the door. Each time the bell jingled, he jumped. Finally, Susan rushed in, looking over her shoulder as she hurried to his table. "I think I lost them," she said, sliding into the booth. Her blonde hair was messy and her eyes wide with fear. "What is happening, Jack?" Jack pushed a cup of coffee toward her. "I'm not sure. But I saw them. They're not human. They said something about a galactic council. Susan wrapped her hands around the warm mug. The ones that came to my place looked almost human, but not quite. They knew about the signal and the data. They knew my name. Mine too, Jack said. They said the information wasn't meant for humans. Whatever we found, they really don't want us to have it. Susan lowered her voice. What do we do now? We can't go home. We can't go to the police. Who would believe us? Jack thought for a moment. Greg Howard. Your ex-boyfriend. The computer guy. Jack asked, surprised. Susan nodded. He used to work for the NSA as a cryptographer. If anyone can help us understand the data we found, it's him. Plus, his cabin in the mountains is isolated. We could hide there. Will he help us? He owes me a favor, Susan said. Let's go before those things find us. They paid for their coffee and left in Jack's car. As the sun rose, they headed west toward the Appalachian Mountains. For the first hour, they drove in tense silence, constantly checking the rearview mirror. I think we're clear, Jack finally said, relaxing slightly. Just then, Susan pointed at something in the side mirror. Look, black sedans. 3 of them. Jack looked and saw 3 identical black cars gaining on them quickly. Government plates, he said. Are they with the aliens or just regular government? Does it matter? Speed up, Susan urged. Jack pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The old car shuddered as it accelerated. The black sedans kept pace easily. As they approached a busy intersection, one of the cars pulled alongside them. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a black suit wearing sunglasses. He held up something that looked like a badge. Pull over now, the man commanded. Jack swerved suddenly, taking an exit ramp at the last second. The sudden move caught their pursuers off guard. Jack weaved through side streets and eventually turned into a large shopping mall parking lot. We need to ditch the car, he said. They can track it. They abandoned the car and hurried into the crowded mall. For 2 hours, they wandered from store to store, constantly watching for anyone following them. Finally, they slipped out a service entrance and caught a bus heading west. By nightfall, they had changed buses 3 times and were approaching the small town nearest to Greg's cabin. They walked the last 5 miles through the woods, guided by Susan's phone map. The cabin appeared as a dark shape among the trees, with no lights visible. Are you sure he's here? Jack whispered as they approached. Susan nodded. He rarely leaves. He's become something of a hermit since he quit the NSA. She knocked on the door in a specific pattern. After a long moment, lights came on inside. The door opened a crack, revealing a bearded man with suspicious eyes. Susan, he said, surprised. What are you doing here? We need your help, Greg, Susan said. It's a matter of life and death. Greg looked at Jack, then back at Susan. Who's after you? You wouldn't believe us if we told you, Jack said. Greg's expression darkened. Try me. I've seen some pretty unbelievable things in my time. Can we come in first? Susan asked, looking nervously at the dark woods around them. Greg hesitated, then opened the door wider. 3 days. You get 3 days of my help. Then you're on your own. As they stepped inside, none of them noticed the small drone hovering silently among the trees, recording everything. Greg's cabin was small but packed with advanced computer equipment. Monitors lined one wall, and servers hummed quietly in the corner. Empty coffee cups and takeout containers were scattered around, evidence of long work sessions. Nice setup for a hermit, Jack commented as Greg cleared papers from a chair. Greg shrugged. Old habits die hard. I may have left the NSA, but I still keep busy. Susan placed her small drive on the desk. We need you to look at this data. It's from a signal we caught at the observatory. We think it's alien communication. Greg laughed, but his smile faded when he saw their serious faces. You're not joking. We were chased by actual aliens, Jack said. They called themselves representatives of some galactic council. Greg stared at them for a long moment. Let me see the data. For the next 3 days, they barely slept. Greg worked tirelessly at his computers, running the signal through various decryption programs. Jack and Susan took turns watching the surrounding forest for signs of pursuit. On the morning of the 3rd day, Greg called them to his main workstation. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his beard looked wilder than ever. "I got something," he said, pointing to one of the screens. "It's not complete, but I've decrypted parts of the signal." Susan leaned forward. "What does it say?" "It's an announcement," Greg explained, "for something called the 5,000th Gathering of the Galactic Council. It's scheduled to happen 6 weeks from now." "A gathering of aliens?" Jack asked. "Where?" Greg tapped some keys, bringing up a new screen. "That's the crazy part. According to these coordinates, it's happening on the moon, the far side, where we can't see from Earth." Susan gasped. "The moon? There's nothing there." "According to our telescopes, there's nothing there," Greg corrected. "But this signal talks about a permanent base. It's been there for thousands of years." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "What else?" Greg scrolled through the text on his screen. "There's an agenda for the meeting. One item is about Earth's quarantine status and whether humans are ready for elevation." "Elevation? What does that mean?" Susan asked. "I think it means official contact," Greg said. "But there's something else. A discussion about contingency measures if humans discover the Council's existence prematurely." The three looked at each other, the implication clear. "They're talking about us," Jack said quietly. "We weren't supposed to know about them." Greg nodded. "There's more. I found a list of attendees. 187 different sentient species from across the galaxy will be at this meeting." 187, Susan repeated. "All those civilizations out there, and we never knew." Greg typed another command. "I also found security protocols, ship docking procedures, and diplomatic guidelines. This is the real deal." Jack paced the small cabin. "We need to tell someone about this. The world needs to know." "And who exactly would believe us?" Greg asked. "We'd be labeled crazy conspiracy theorists. Best case scenario, the government takes the data, and we never see it again. Worst case, those aliens find us first." Susan was about to respond when a high-pitched whine filled the air outside. They rushed to the windows. Small objects were circling the cabin, moving too fast, and too precisely to be birds. "Drones," Greg said, quickly backing away from the window. "Not regular drones. Those are way too advanced." The lights in the cabin flickered, then went out completely. The computers went dark. "They cut the power," Greg said, grabbing a flashlight. "We need to go. Now." Jack took the small drive with the decrypted data. "Where can we go?" "If they found us here." A loud knock at the door cut him off. They froze, staring at each other in the dim light. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Whoever it is," Greg whispered, "it's not human." Greg slowly reached for the shotgun he kept near the door. Jack and Susan backed away, looking for another exit. The knocking came again, harder this time. "We know you're in there," a female voice called. "We're not with the Council. We're here to help." The three humans exchanged uncertain glances. "Why should we believe you?" Greg shouted back. "Because if we were with the Council, we wouldn't be knocking," the voice replied. "Their drones will be sending reinforcements soon. You have about 10 minutes before they arrive." Greg hesitated, then cracked open the door, keeping the shotgun ready. What he saw made him step back in shock. Standing on the porch were three beings unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The one in front looked almost human, except for her bluish skin and large almond-shaped eyes. Behind her stood a creature with 4 arms and reddish scales covering its body. The third being was short and stocky with metallic-looking skin that reflected the moonlight. "May we come in?" The blue-skinned female asked politely. Greg stepped aside, keeping his gun raised. The three alien visitors entered quickly. I am Commander Lith of the Proxima Resistance, the blue-skinned female said. These are my colleagues, Drav and Kel. She pointed to the four-armed and metallic beings, respectively. Resistance? Susan asked. Against what? Against the Galactic Council's policy of keeping humanity isolated, Lith explained. Not all species agree with how Earth has been treated. Jack stepped forward. You know about the signal we intercepted? Lith nodded. We've been monitoring Council communications. When we learned humans had discovered their secret, we came to help. Why would you help us? Gray asked suspiciously, still holding his shotgun. Because we believe humans deserve to know the truth, Lith said. The Council has kept your species in the dark for centuries, claiming it's for your protection. But many of us think it's really about control. Drav, the four-armed being, moved to the window and peered out. The Council's security forces will be here soon, he said in a deep, rumbling voice. We must leave immediately. Come with us, Lith said. We can offer protection and explain everything about the Council. How do we know this isn't a trick? Susan asked. Kel, the metallic being, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. If we wanted to capture you, we already would have. The Council wants the knowledge contained in your data drive destroyed, along with anyone who has seen it. A distant humming sound grew louder outside. That's them, Drav warned. Council ships approaching. We need to decide now, Lith urged. Come with us or face the Council alone. Jack looked at Susan and Greg. After a moment of silent communication, he nodded. We'll go with you. We don't have much choice. Lith led them quickly out the back door to a clearing where a sleek craft waited, hidden under the trees. It was shaped like a teardrop and glowed softly from within. As they boarded, bright lights appeared in the sky above the cabin. Council shuttles, Kel explained as they strapped into strange curved seats. They're bringing a containment team. The ship rose silently into the air, just as several larger craft descended toward the cabin. Lith touched controls on a panel, and the ship accelerated rapidly away from the mountains. Where are we going? Jack asked, watching the ground speed by below them. Somewhere safe, Lith answered. A place where we can talk freely. As they flew, Lith explained that the Galactic Council had been monitoring Earth for thousands of years. Humans were designated as a developing species under strict non-interference protocols. But the truth, she said, is that certain Council factions have been secretly influencing human development all along, violating their own rules. Why? Susan asked. Control, Drav rumbled. Earth has strategic value and unique resources. The Council pretends to protect you, but really they're controlling how quickly you advance. Jack looked out the window at the stars above. How many others know about this resistance of yours? Lith smiled. More than the Council realizes, and now that humans have discovered the truth, everything is about to change. The alien ship descended through clouds and plunged into the ocean. Jack, Susan, and Greg watched in amazement as water surrounded them. Yet the craft moved smoothly deeper and deeper. We're going underwater, Susan asked, gripping her seat tightly. Lith nodded. Our base is hidden in the Mariana Trench. It's one of the few places on Earth the Council doesn't monitor constantly. After 20 minutes of descent, lights appeared in the darkness. A massive structure came into view, built into the side of an underwater cliff. It looked like a city of bubbles, with domes of different sizes connected by transparent tubes. Welcome to Station Deep Hope, Lith said as their ship approached a docking area, home to the Earth branch of the Proxima Resistance. The ship docked with a gentle bump. When the door opened, Jack expected to feel cold or wet, but the air inside the station was comfortable and dry. They followed their alien guides through curved hallways, filled with beings of various shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human, others were completely different from anything on Earth. How many of you are there? Greg asked, staring at a floating jellyfish-like creature that hovered past them. At this base, about 200, Drav answered. But across the galaxy, thousands support our cause. They entered a large circular room where a dozen diverse aliens sat around a table. One of them stood up, a woman with short gray hair and human features. Humans, Jack exclaimed in surprise. The woman smiled. Yes, I'm human. Dr. Lynn Chambers, former NASA astrobiologist. I've been working with the Resistance for 5 years. How did you end up here? Susan asked. I was abducted, as you might say, Lynn explained. But when I learned the truth about the Council, I chose to stay and help. Lith guided them to empty seats. Dr. Chambers has been invaluable in helping us understand human society and how best to prepare for eventual contact. Once everyone was seated, Lith addressed the group. Our friends have intercepted Council communications about the upcoming gathering. Greg Howard has partially decrypted the data. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing the information Greg had discovered. The 5,000th gathering is particularly important. Lith continued. The Council will vote on Earth's future. 3 options are being considered. Lynn tapped the display, highlighting different sections of text. First option, continue Earth's quarantine for another 1,000 years. Second option, begin controlled contact with selected human representatives. Third option. She paused. Sanitation. Sanitation. Jack asked, not liking the sound of that word. It means eliminating threats, a plant-like alien explained in a whispering voice. Some Council members believe humans are advancing too rapidly. They see your nuclear weapons and early space travel as dangerous. Susan looked horrified. They would destroy us. Not all of you, Drav said. Just enough to set your civilization back a few centuries. They'd done it before to other species. Greg studied the hologram carefully. So this gathering on the moon will decide our fate, without any human input. That's how the Council has always operated, Lith said, but we have a plan to change that. She brought up a new image showing a massive space station hidden on the far side of the moon. This is where the gathering will take place. Representatives from all 187 member species will attend. Security will be tight, but we've identified a way to get inside. Why would we want to go there? Jack asked. Lynn smiled. To crash their party. To let them know humans are aware of their existence and won't accept decisions made about Earth without our involvement. That's insane, Greg argued. We'd be walking into a place filled with beings who might want us eliminated. Not all of them feel that way, Lith countered. Many Council members would support human inclusion, but they follow the rules. If humans demonstrated knowledge of the Council's existence in a way that couldn't be covered up, we forced their hand, Susan realized. They'd have to acknowledge us. Jack looked around at the aliens helping them. So what exactly is this plan? Lith's expression grew serious. We infiltrate the gathering, access their communication systems, and broadcast the truth, not just to the Council, but to all of Earth as well. A global revelation, Lynn added. No more secrets. And you need us because? Greg asked. Because, Lith said, this message needs to come from humans themselves. For the next 2 weeks, Jack, Susan, Greg, and Lynn trained intensively for their mission. The Resistance provided them with special suits that could change their appearance. These cloaking suits will make you look like Centaurian service staff, Lith explained as they tried them on. Centaurians handle most of the Council's maintenance and food service. No one pays much attention to them. The suits felt strange on their skin, but worked perfectly. When Jack looked in a mirror, a tall, gray-skinned being with 4 eyes stared back at him. How do we communicate while wearing these? Susan asked, her voice sounding deeper and more musical through the suit's translation system. The suits will translate your speech automatically, Drav explained. Just speak normally. To others, you'll sound like a Centaurian. They also learned basic information about the major Council species and studied maps of the moon base. Lynn taught them proper council etiquette. Never make direct eye contact with a Regelian, she warned. They see it as a challenge. And never touch a vegan's head crest. It's considered deeply offensive. On the day of the mission, they boarded a supply ship bound for the moon. The Resistance had arranged for them to be listed as replacement service staff. The journey took 6 hours in the surprisingly fast alien craft. As they approached the far side of the moon, Jack gasped at the sight outside the viewports. A massive structure spread across the lunar surface, far larger than any human space station. It looked like a giant silver flower with dozens of petals extending from a central hub. The Council Regional Headquarters, Lith said quietly, built over 3,000 years ago. They'd been watching Earth from here all this time. The supply ship docked in a massive hangar filled with craft of all shapes and sizes. Jack, Susan, Greg, and Lynn, now disguised as Centaurians, followed Lith through busy corridors. Everywhere they looked, aliens of different species hurried past. Some walked on many legs, others floated or slithered. "Remember the plan," Lith whispered. "Place the quantum transmitters at the designated points. Then meet at the central hub before the opening ceremony." They split into pairs, with Jack and Lynn going one way while Susan and Greg went another. Each pair carried small devices that looked like ordinary cleaning tools, but were actually advanced transmitters. Jack and Lynn made their way through service corridors, placing transmitters at key locations as they went. They passed kitchens where strange foods were being prepared and storage rooms filled with supplies from across the galaxy. "Some of these beings look like our stories of angels," Jack whispered as they watched a tall, glowing creature with wing-like appendages float past. "Others look like what we call demons or monsters." Lynn nodded. Many Earth legends came from early Council visitors who weren't as careful as they should have been. Humans remembered these encounters in mythology. In another corridor, they saw a procession of tall, golden beings with elaborate headdresses. "The Arcturian delegation," Lynn explained. "One of the oldest Council members. They tend to support keeping Earth isolated." As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a human-looking man in a black suit. Jack froze in shock until Lynn pulled him along. "Shapeshifters," she whispered once they were clear. "Council observers who monitor Earth directly. They can look perfectly human." Meanwhile, Susan and Greg were placing their transmitters near the communication centers. Everything was going smoothly until Greg accidentally used a human gesture, a thumbs up, when a supervisor gave him instructions. The supervisor, a six-eyed being with tentacle-like arms, stared at him suspiciously. That was not a Centaurian response, it said in a bubbling voice. Greg tried to recover. "Apologies, I have been studying other cultures." The supervisor seemed unconvinced. It touched a device on its wrist and spoke quietly. "We've been compromised," Greg whispered to Susan. "We need to hurry." They placed their last transmitter and rushed toward the central hub, where Jack and Lynn were waiting. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "Security alert," a calm voice announced in multiple languages. "All delegates proceed to the central chamber. Security personnel report to Section 5. "That's us," Susan said. "They're looking for us." Lith appeared from a side passage, her expression urgent. "The opening ceremony is starting early. We need to get to the communication controls now, before security locks everything down." As they hurried toward the central hub, Jack could see through massive windows that hundreds of ships were still arriving, bringing delegates from across the galaxy for a meeting that would decide Earth's fate. Security forces flooded the corridors as Jack, Susan, Greg, Lynn, and Lith raced toward the central chamber. Their Centaurian disguises wouldn't fool anyone for long now. "This way," Lith urged, leading them down a maintenance tunnel. "We can reach the communication hub through here." They emerged near a massive door where delegates were entering the central chamber. Guards checked each one carefully. "We'll never get past them," Greg whispered. Lith pointed to a small panel near the floor. "Service entrance. For emergencies during meetings." They crawled through the narrow passage one by one, emerging behind a large display screen in the central chamber. The sight before them was breathtaking. Thousands of alien beings filled the enormous dome-shaped room, representing every imaginable form of intelligent life. At the center stood a raised platform where important-looking delegates were taking their seats. The council leadership, Lynn whispered, the 12 oldest species who make the final decisions. Jack looked around desperately. Where's the communication control panel? Lith pointed to a small station near the edge of the room. A single operator sat there, controlling the translation systems and recording equipment. I'll create a distraction, Lith said. When I do, Lynn and Gray head for the transmitters we placed. Jack and Susan, get to that control panel. Before they could move, a loud voice echoed through the chamber. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, announced a tall, elegant being with silvery skin. We gather for our 5,000th meeting, as we have done since the dawn of our cooperation. The crowd quieted as the speaker continued. Our first matter concerns Earth, a developing world under our protection. Recent events require immediate attention. Humans have intercepted Council communications. A murmur spread through the crowd. Now, Lith whispered, then stepped out and shouted something in an alien language. Many delegates turned to look at her. Jack and Susan darted toward the communication panel. The operator spotted them and reached for an alarm, but Susan was faster. She pressed the small device Drav had given her against the operator's neck, causing them to slump unconscious. Jack quickly connected the device from his pocket to the control panel. I hope this works, he muttered as he activated it. Across the chamber, Lynn and Greg reached the main transmitter controls and began the sequence they had practiced. Guards were closing in from all directions. Jack saw the panel lights change from red to green. We're connected, he told Susan. The quantum network is active. At that moment, guards grabbed them both. More guards surrounded Lynn and Greg by the transmitters. Lith was already being restrained by several security officers. The silver-skinned speaker looked down at them angrily. Bring those intruders here. The guards dragged all 5 of them to the central platform. Jack's Centaurian disguise flickered and failed, revealing his human form. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the other humans were also revealed. Humans, someone shouted. How did they get here? The silver speaker leaned down to examine Jack. You have violated our most sacred laws by coming here. Explain yourselves before punishment is decided. Jack stood tall, facing not just the speaker but the entire assembly. We don't recognize your authority to make decisions about Earth without human input. For too long, you've watched us, studied us, and even interfered with our development while pretending to protect us. This is outrageous, a delegate shouted. Jack smiled. What's outrageous is that right now, every electronic device on Earth is receiving this broadcast. Humans everywhere are seeing this gathering and learning the truth about your council. He gestured to the walls where large screens showed their transmission was indeed active. Images of the council chamber were being sent to Earth. You can no longer hide, Susan added. Humanity knows we're not alone, and we won't be decided for without a voice. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates demanded immediate action against Earth. Others called for calm and reconsideration. The silver speaker raised a hand for silence. This changes everything, they admitted. If all humans now know of our existence, the quarantine policy is meaningless. We don't want conflict, Jack said. We want recognition and respect. A seat at your table. After hours of heated debate, broadcast live to a stunned Earth, the Council voted by a narrow margin. Humanity would be acknowledged and a path created for Earth to join galactic society. 6 months later, Jack stood in the same chamber, this time as Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council. Humanity had taken its rightful place among the stars.